Hey, welcome back to the Build It Basement. I'm Kerm, and today we're going to do some cutting, crimping, and chatting about the V-Core 4 IDEX rat rig 500mm machine that we're building together. This is video 2 in the series, and we're pretty much doing some wiring prep, and without any further ado, check it out. All right, today we're going to start off working on some of those electronics and doing the preparations to get those ready to install in the printer. And with that, let's take a look at the manual real quick. So the first thing they want us to do is basically start working on our Hotend. We're going to do some crimping, some things like that. We're also going to be doing some measuring so we can cut the wires to their at the right distances. So when we go to assemble things, we don't have a bunch of extra wire hanging off. I have gone ahead and pre-done, because I'm doing an IDEX obviously, I've pre-done half of the parts because everything is in duplicate. And again, on this particular video, just like the other previous one where we're doing prep of parts, I'm not going to record this real time and kind of drag you through the whole thing. A lot of it's going to be skipped through and whatnot. If you need specifics on basically how I crimp or things like that, I might slow down here and there, but for the most part this is going to be strictly kind of showing over what we do based on the manual for these parts. So let's take a look here. We have our Hotend, and the two major things are with this Hotend is that we need the crimp parts, obviously, which are JST XHPs. But we're also going to be trimming these wires a little bit. And when I say that, I say it because I have my wires right here, and these are already trimmed down. This is our Hotend, matches the picture. It's basically a Fetus Rapido, and this is a high flow unit. Is it the ultra high flow, or is it the, let's see, it's a Hotend Rapido Hotend 2. I know it's a high flow. I don't think it's an ultra high flow, but it might be. And then you have two sets of wires that come off of this. You have your thermistor wires, and then you also have, which are the blue ones right here, and then you have your red wires right here, which are your power wires that go into it. And these ones actually don't have a connector on it because on the actual board that we're going to connect to, our CAN or USB board here, we have the ability to utilize this in such a way that basically we can either crimp it right in there with a bare wire, or we can basically put some ferrules on there. So I might put some ferrules on there. I haven't yet, but that might be something we do. But yeah, that's why those ones don't require any crimps. All right, so what we need to do is take the one I already did and take the one I have not done and match it up. And this is going to feel really odd because basically what you're going to wind up doing is cutting off these connectors that are there. You can't really reuse them. You can depin them, but you're going to spend more time trying to depin than it's really worth. So let's take a look at specifics here because I know we need to cut this back. So on the blue wires, the thermistor wires, are going to be 160 millimeters, and on the red wires, they're going to be about 150. So if I go back to my pre-done unit here, I'm just going to lock that in place, you can see that basically these are 160 and these are 170. Now the reason I did that is to leave myself a little bit extra slack. I'd rather have an extra centimeter or 10 millimeters of extra wire than be short a little bit. Worst comes to worst, when I go to do things, if I need to, what I can do is just simply put a very small little loop in that wire when I go to do it, and that gives me a little bit of freedom to do stuff. Because in the future, if something happens, like for instance, you have one of these wires break, or you have a crimp that comes bad, or something along those lines, what happens is you might wind up having to extend the wire, which means soldering. It's ugly, it's bad. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. So we're going to do it my way, which is leave them a little bit long. So better safe than sorry, right? That's how it goes. So I'm going to cut mine about 10 millimeters longer or 1 centimeter longer than they're supposed to be. And I'm not going to measure them because I have the one I already did here to measure off of. And the first and easiest thing to do here is the heater core power wires, which I'm just going to line up with these ones. And I'm just going to give them a cut. Easy as that. Pretty good. side cutters tool that you should have. I do have those probably on my Amazon store. I have a bunch of these tools down there, so if you do want to check those out, feel free. They'll be in the description. Maybe I'll put up a little barcode type, QR code type thing, but we'll see. So stripping these back, what you want to do is basically give yourself about 2 to 3 millimeters on these. And you're going to want to use strippers that are probably, if you're the type of guy that basically has some tools around, you know, you have some electrical tools and whatnot, these types of strippers that you're going to be using to do something like this are probably substantially smaller than the strippers that you're used to using. These actually will do gauge wires down into the 20s, and I believe these go down to, yeah, 30 gauge. So right there, if you look closely, you'll see they go down to about 30 gauge. And if you don't use something small like that, if you're trying to use a bigger wire stripper, can you do it? Yeah. One of the things that you might try to do if you don't have anything, and I'm just telling you, you should not use the wrong strippers, but if for some reason it's all you got, if you pull them and you hold it at a slight angle when you pull it, you'll usually get you by, but I don't suggest doing that. Get yourself the right tools. They're not very expensive. I think these right here are about 12 bucks maybe. So between this and this, these are some Kleins. These are actually pretty nice. You might have $20, and you're building in this particular case, a $2,000 to $3,000 printer. So the 20 bucks of the tools is something that you should definitely put in for. But all right, so we have that. We're going to do the other one now, which is the thermistor, which is the blue one. And on this one, I'm going to pull it aside here again and just match it up. Should be about the same. And I'm just going to mark it with my fingers. And when I do that, make sure I give myself a little bit of extra because I need to leave those wires in there. And I'm going to slide this back right here. This is kind of a little, I should have done that first actually. It's a little marker here to tell me what that is. Not that I don't know what it is, but it could be helpful in the future if for some reason we forget. And you know what? Let's go ahead and measure this because I'm in trouble holding that. So this one was in the manual 160, so we're going to leave it around 170. So I'm going to bring it up here to my 17, and I'm simply going to cut it off right here, pretty dang near the edge here. And that is removed. I know, again, it feels weird doing that, but that's what you're doing. So on these wires, we're actually going to make sure we strip off just a little bit less this time around. I'm going to throw my glasses on because I'm getting old. And we're going to strip these back. And this time we need to basically only have up to about 2 millimeters. We don't want to have 3 or 4 or too much really, because it's going to interfere with us crimping our wire the way we want to crimp it. So what I have here basically is very, very shortly crimped wires. Yeah. So bring it back here. And then we have our JSTH XH connector here, which is this guy right here. And we have our, I believe it's female. Let me see here. What does it say? Does it actually tell us? JST end of the wires. It tells us up here. Oh, male. 2-pin male. So, not those ones. Oh, those ones? Yes. So, we're going to grab these. And let me show you what those look like on camera. So these little metal guys, they come on a string like this. Sometimes if you buy them from a vendor that's maybe a little bit more expensive, they may come individually, but it doesn't really matter how they come. So these are the pins, and this is the connector, and these are going to wind up inside of this connector once we crimp them on. What I do to get these off of the strip, the easiest way I find is to actually use the flat end of my angle cutters and bring it up against the back end of these and just give it a quick clip like that. That way you don't need to trim anything, you don't have to redo anything. And do the second one like that. We're going to need 2. And then once you get to the point where it's getting a little longer, I just cut off that tail. And then we set those aside, get rid of the extra metal in the back. That's just a holder, don't need it. And I only did 2 there because it's probably going to force me to mess one of these crimps up. Because I'm human. And that's what's going to happen because I didn't crimp 3. Usually when I pull these off, I like to do 3. It's just to make sure we got them. And these are, again, things that you should kind of sort of see if you can have some extras of. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to wind up messing up a crimp and having to wait for something to come in the mail way longer than you should. So let's go ahead and get this in here, and I'll do a close-up of this once I get it crimped on. And then we're going to fly through a bunch of other crimping. Maybe do a little montage, right? All right, so let's take a look at that up close, see what that looks like. Does that look good? Let's see if I get that right in there. So right there, if you notice, real quick, is basically you have 2 sections that are crimped on this wire. You have a back section here, which is crimped onto the insulation of that wire. And then you have a center crimp right here, which is actually crimping onto the metallic portion of that wire. And then you have your actual connector here on the end. You don't have a bunch of overlap on the edges of it because it will stop you from putting it inside the connector. But at the same time, it's firm, it's on there good. I can lift it up utilizing that piece. I can give it a good little pull and it doesn't come off. Now I always suggest you kind of do that, kind of, grab it. You don't want to pull too hard, obviously, but give it a little yank, a little pull, a little tension, make sure it stays on there. It's a lot easier to fix it now than it would be once you have it in the printer and it breaks, because it was just sitting there, it was just floating. I'm going to show you how I put this inside of my crimper now, and I'm going to show you these iCrimps, and these are my preferred method of crimping this type of connector. Pretty much I crimp almost everything except for the smallest connectors with these. And the reason I don't do the smallest ones with these is because they're thick and they're a little bit bulky. But what I like to do is I like to look at these close up. And if you do, you'll notice that basically there are 2 sides to this. And that represents basically one crimp being a little bit bigger and the one being a little bit smaller. And the smaller one you want to be facing towards the actual just metal part, with the larger one facing towards where the insulation is, because you don't want that to crimp down as hard. So get my bearings here real quick. Yep, all right, like that. And then the way I choose, and this is probably 100% inaccurate, they do tell you on the side here what size each of these is for. And I consider that a good suggestion. Like these ones say they go from 1 to 2, but I can easily do 2.5s and other crimps of these as well. You just have to make sure you don't squeeze it to all hell before you do it. So now that I have it in there, and I have this one in the second portion of that, like so. See if that shows up on camera at all. Yep, kinda. Up like that. Yep. I come into the back side and I place my wire in, and I make sure that my insulation is in as well, and it's kind of a point where it kind of stops you from going further, and that's when I crimp. And then what I like to do is grab it with 2 fingers, one on each side, and then push down and away from the crimp area. And that way you're not just kind of yanking it, you're doing it from both sides at the same time. So there I have my 2 crimps, right like that. They look pretty good. They both are solid, so we got what we need. Once we do that, we got to put on our connector. And one thing to note when it comes to thermistors and power wires and things like that is there's no plus and minus, there's no right and wrong. So pin doesn't matter as long as they go into the connector properly. They don't need to be pinned a certain direction at all. And I will show you real quick. I'll put one in right now. And get this one in. And then the other one. And the big thing is there's a little hook on top of these. And you want to make sure that that hook is facing upwards into the clear area, or the area where there is a hole in your crimp connector. So basically there's a little area that's got a hole in there. That's kind of where your pin is off the top your connector is going to connect to. That's where you want to aim for. Once you do that, it kind of clicks in place and locks in, and then you get yourself a full connection right there. So that's our hot end, and not too shabby. We got both of them done now. So let's go back to the manual, see what we got. We have prepared toolhead Endstop cable, and the Endstop cable is this little guy right here. And basically what this is going to do is connect our Endstop to our control board right there. And when it receives the Endstop connection, it's going to basically send that to the control board so it knows that we've hit our Endstop. So, got this pre-propagated right here. We got our connector and we got our pins, and we're going to need 3 pins and 1 connector. And one thing I will make note here real quick is that they identify this with a white connector, and the one that I have that came with the stuff that I got is a black connector. So don't go by color, go by what it's supposed to be, which is a JST-PH in this particular case. This is a 5-pin JST-PH, but we're only going to use 3 of those pins when we do this. And this kind of goes back to originally when we were working on the last video. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Where don't pay attention necessarily to the color of the parts you have or the looks of some of the parts you have. Just make sure they're the proper parts based on what their function is, because sometimes they don't match the manual the way they should. My black connector is not white, and it is the proper connection. So I made sure it fit inside the control board the way it should. I know it's the right one, so I know I'm doing it the right way. It just doesn't match in color, and that doesn't really matter. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. And if we look at the manual, basically it's just straight through. We're going to repin this so we can put it inside this connector. And I'm going to do that. And quite frankly, it's probably going to get fast forward through. So I'm not going to say much while I'm doing it. All right, so we got all 3 of these crimped over now, and they're ready to go into the socket. This one's kind of similar to the other one, but let's look at exactly what order these need to go into, because I believe it's a little different. So now that we have this all set up, all crimped up, ready to go, and whatnot, they are actually right here. So basically, what we need to make sure is that we set our part on the other side to match up and align with the color coding that they show here, because we're going to use the far 3 pins on one end versus the other end. So yellow is going to go first in this thing. So I'm going to put yellow in right here. A little click when that goes in. And that's followed by black. And then finish out with a red, like that. And there we go. We have our yellow, black, and red. Matches up with what they got there on the screen. To a T. There we go. Another thing done. Awesome. All right, so what is next? Next up is preparing the part cooling fans. So on this one, we're basically going to be doing an extension cable, and we're going to be doing something with the actual fan. So this this Ultraflow by Netic is a pretty beefy fan. It's actually one of the things that's kind of interesting about this particular printer is the fans on this thing are pretty pretty decent. This is probably about twice as thick as a fan that you'd find on a Voron printer in terms of the stealth burner head. So it should push at least double the amount of air. Pretty cool. And that's been cut off and crimped to that, and that one has been as well. And right here, if we look at the manual, we need the fan, which part number, part type doesn't exactly match up with what's in the manual. We need some Molex microfit connectors. which are going to be over here. We also need some, let's see, male and female, because we're going to extend this. We also need our, where are they here? Our XH 2.54 and JST 2.54 for the Endstop pinout, and JST XHP-5. Man, these numbers, we're going to need some connectors, is what it comes down to, right? And then 4 crimps. So the first thing they want us to do is actually just hack off the end of this again. And then lengthwise, let's see if they tell us what we need to do. Fan, 3 millimeters. They do not tell us exactly. Strip 3 mils insulation from the end of each bare wire if the wire's already stripped. So the way they show it, the unit is already, doesn't have a connector on it. Ours does. So we're going to cut that connector off. And then we're going to be sitting here with about 10 millimeters of exposed wire out of this sheathing that's on there, and it's not really workable as is. So what I like to do is, and I'm sure you could work it if you really wanted to, but to make life easier, I'm just going to basically peel away a little portion of this additional sheathing that's on here. And when I do that, it's going to make it a lot easier to strip these wires. It's going to make it a lot easier to crimp these wires and do all the things we need to do. And that kind of pulled a little bit harder than I wanted to, but we should be good. I'm just going to trim this up. Try to be neat about it. And we have our wires here, and they're saying 3 millimeters insulation from the end of the bare wires. So we're going to go ahead and do that. These are pretty thin, roughly 3 millimeters. Roughly 3 millimeters. And roughly 3 millimeters. There we go. So 3 millimeters across the board. And when they're done like this, it would be nice if I knew I had extra wire, because what I would normally do in something like this is actually strip them a little bit more than I need to make sure I can get a good twist on these wires, to make sure that they're nice and interlocked with each other. But since I don't know exactly how long these wires need to be, and they're not saying just trim them to a certain length, I'm stuck with what I got, which is basically trying to twist up these little tiny ends. Not a big deal. Should work out just fine. And then we're going to be crimping these onto a Molex connector. Now, these crimps are quite a bit larger than some of the other crimps. This is a Molex 3, I believe. Oh, Microfit. Microfit, yeah. And we're going to be using this one right here, which is basically a, there we go. Looks like that. It's got a little lock on top here, and the actual wires are going to go into the back side where it's nice and square on the back here. So that's what we're using for this. And the actual wires that, or the crimps that we're going to be putting in are square on the end. Let's see if we can get those into focus. As opposed to the ones that are the pins. So you have the male and the female. We're using the female on these. The male's there on the top. They go inside of that. So there we go. And again, I will crimp one here and probably fast forward through some of this, but this is what we're doing. So I'm going to set aside those males, make sure I don't mess them up and wind up using them when I don't need to use them. And again, I'm just going to cut these back the way I mentioned earlier. Usually find I can get about 2 before I have to cut this back, so 4 are on there. Get 2 on one side, 2 on the other. These are going to be super easy to crimp. So we're going to go ahead and get these crimped on. And the reason I say these are super easy to crimp is because they're pretty big. When you have a big crimp, like a big crimp-on crimp, and a small wire, it tends to be easier because the wire goes right inside pretty easy, and obviously it's just easy to work with, right? So get that in like that. Nice and snug, good. And we'll show that to the camera. Like that. Not too bad. And let's get the other ones done. So before we jump in and I actually fast forward through all this, I'll talk a little bit about this fan for a second while I'm doing the second crimp here. Kind of a twofer here while I'm crimping. So some fans come with 2 wires and some fans come with more wires. And when you have a fan with just 2 wires, it's pretty much just going to be controlled by the voltage going into those 2 wires. But the thing is that whatever's driving that fan has no idea how fast that fan's going, and it also has limited control just based on that voltage. When you have fans with more wires, basically you could have a tachometer type system on those wires. You can have different things happening there, which makes these fans, I wouldn't say of a higher quality, but of a higher amount of precision, or technically better. So again, nice to see some of these parts the way they are. Having a nice beefy fan here with the 4 wires, it's not a bad thing. So all right, get all 4 of those done, and let's go back to the manual real quick. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and our colors don't match up with what's in the manual again, because why would they? Here they're showing that their wires are basically a gray, a red, a black, and a yellow, and I have a blue, white, red, and black. So we'll say it's close. So the big thing here, and this is actually something to note, is we're going to look at this real quick. That's how that's going together if you had the right colors. But right here down at the bottom, right down here, is telling us if we have a different type of fan, like this IDEX. They tell us right here that a pulse width modulation wire is brown, and our tachometer blue. We'll see brown wire blue if the fan's IDEX, white if the fan's IDEX, which ours are IDEX fans. So there's a little note, kind of a little stop gap replacement here for the whole drawing and everything like that, that tells you that, you know, this is what you do when you have this fan. And that, again, no harm, no foul. Figured it out. Following this video, I'm helping you out, hopefully. But I'm not a big fan of having a direction that's very specific and then having a little note underneath something that tells you how you're supposed to do it if you have something different when the kit's provided by the manufacturer. It's understandable sometimes you have to switch out parts and whatnot, but it makes it tough for somebody that's building something for the first time. So we're gonna go ahead and follow this, and red wire's in the top left. We're gonna put that one in. So red wire top left. Red wire top left. Let's see here. All right, red wire top left. Yep, snap that one in. And then top right is the black wire. So we're going to snap that one in. And then bottom right is the white wire. Bottom left is the blue wire. So bottom left first, we'll do the blue wire. And each of these are snapping in as they go in. I can hear it here, and you can physically feel it when it happens. And that's what we wind up with right there for a connector. And let's look at that a little bit closer. Something like this. And then what I like to do is just basically give it a little bit of a twist. Not so much that it's hurting the wires, but just enough so that basically just keeps it all uniform. And if we look closely here, we have the wires in the order that we're supposed to have them, which is red up here, black, blue, and then white over here. So next up is going to be the extension, I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna make sure both my fans match here. Double check my work. Black, blue, white, yep, they match. Set those aside. So yeah, so now we're looking at the extension. So we got a 1500 millimeter span of 3 wires, and basically we're going to cut off the JST connector, leaving the bare wires. You don't need the connector. So this is kind of interesting because these connectors actually look pretty similar, but you will see that one's quite a bit larger than the other if you look closely at them. So this is the one that's on the unit already, and this is the one that we're replacing it with. So similar but different. And then you also notice, which feels kind of awkward and different, is the fact that this is a 2-pin versus a 3-pin. So keep that in your mind. And 2-pin is correct, even though it feels kind of weird that you're doing it that way. It's the correct way to do it. So we got to unravel this real quick. I'm going to cut this apart. And I'm not quite sure why they use zip ties to hold these, but carefully don't cut the wires when you're doing that. And this should be pretty long. Again, what are we looking at? 1500 millimeters. And then we're going to cut off the JST XH, which is either side of this because they're the same connector on both sides. So I'm going to do that. And if you want to depin these, if for some reason you wanted to keep these, to put them in your bin or whatever, these actually are probably one of the easiest connectors to depin. And basically all you have to do is push down and out at the same time, and you can actually pull these out. So if you want to save these, you can. That's up to you. But these types of connectors are pretty easy to depin, unlike these black ones, these Molexes, which can be really difficult to depin. So now we're going to go ahead. Let's see here. They said cutters cut off JST connect from one end of the cable, leaving 3 bare wires. Okay, so we only did one end, so we're going to do that, and I'm going to straighten these out a little bit for us. And they want us to again strip off roughly 3 millimeters of wire. So we'll do that again. Like that. So when I say 3 millimeters of wire, roughly that's what I'm looking at right there. So it's about the thickness, or the length of the stripped wire is about the thickness of the complete wire with the insulation on it, give or take. So we're going to do that, and then based on the information they're providing us here, we are going to pin these. So this time we're using the male pins, and just in case we already forgot, the male pins are the ones that basically don't have a hole. They're kind of like well, they're kind of like pins, really, you know, unlike the other ones, which are kind of like holes. These ones are kind of like pins, so makes sense. So we're going to grab these. We need 3 for right now. Grab 3 of these. Put the other one aside. And again, these are pretty easy. And 3 millimeters, when using big pins like this, really is a little bit shy of what I would normally consider to do, because you got plenty to work with. So you're gonna possibly go a little bit longer than 3 millimeters if you want to. It's not going to hurt anything. But if you don't get them crimped in there and they don't properly crimp, that will hurt you. So I would say if you're looking at it, maybe go a little bit longer on these ones. 3 millimeters should be enough, but if you went upwards of 5 millimeters, you should be okay. Longer than that, you're probably going to interfere with the actual mechanism of the connector. but being that these are males, you're not really running that risk. On a female, when you crimp them, if you have your wire too long, what happens is the actual end of your wire that you crimp to could wind up basically being in the way of the pin coming through. Whereas on a male, you don't really have that problem. So it's 1, 2. Let's get 3. One, 2, and 3. There we go. So another thing I can suggest, if you're concerned about things, is to get yourself a multimeter. This one's kind of a fancy one, but you don't need anything this fancy. You just need a simple multimeter. What you need is a continuity check on it. And what you can do is basically set for continuity. When you're having continuity check on a multimeter like this, what basically you should wind up seeing is hearing is a tone when you have that working. So if you want to make sure your pins are correct, if you're doing this and you're taking your time, especially if it's like first time doing this type of thing, you can come in and basically put one end on, for instance, your white wire here, take your other, put on the white wire, white pin, and that means I have a good crimp, I have good continuity. It doesn't mean I have good crimp actually, it just means I have good continuity. Good crimp also means that it's going to stay on the wire when we pull it. So the red one here, oop, black one, that's good, continuity, and then the red one. So I have good continuity between all those. So highly suggested you get a multimeter, even if you don't specifically need it for this portion. It is good to have to test, but a multimeter will also let you tell what voltages things are. Digital multimeter, by far way better than an analog one for most of what we do, simply because it's a little bit easier to read, a little bit more exact, and just more helpful all around. If you have an old analog multimeter, by all means you can use that analog multimeter. You don't need to go out and buy a new digital one, especially if money's tight. But if you got an extra 20, 25 bucks even, you can buy yourself a cheap digital multimeter. It will definitely help you out. So strongly suggested. All right, so we got these pins on here. Let's see, male, female, most crimp, let's see, verify all 3 crimps terminals correctly crimped to the wires. Terminals very difficult to remove from housing once installed. And that goes back into what we were talking about these Molex connectors specifically, is that to remove these, you basically have to use a tool that goes in and works from the inside out, if you know what I mean. You can't just push something or pull something. They lock in pretty good, and the only way to get them out is from the inside. So you need actual special tools, or if you're really tricky, you can get in there with some really fine nose tweezers, but you're better off just making sure your crimps are on there good. Use a multimeter, test them, make sure they're actually crimped on there and there's electrical continuity. And that's kind of what they're saying right here in the manual when they talk about that. So good stuff. Oh. So good stuff to know. All right, so this one, they want us to put into this, and let's see here. The way they're marking it is with that circle at the top. And that circle at the top is a little bump that is on the actual connector. If we look at the connector real close, we'll see that little bump's right there, and that's our little point of reference, if you will. And to that point of reference, basically we're going to go, sure I put this in the right direction here. We're going to go, get this in the right spot. We're going to be going red to here, black to here, and then white to down here. So let me put this together and I will show you what the finished product looks like. Give me a second here. Wires are kind of in the way a little bit. Okay. Okay, that one's locked in. And just another quick note as I'm putting these together and realizing is if you're having trouble pushing them in while you're doing it, sometimes you have to rotate so that they lock in the proper direction, and they are different for different connectors. Another thing to note, this one right here is kind of bent a little bit, so I'm going to straighten it out before I try to put it in. It's all about getting it in the right direction. Oop, there we go. And then finally the white one, which is down here. Okay, and there we go. And close up of that looks something like this. So our witness mark or our marker is here at the top, right there. And then from the back side, kind of hard to see, but there's your red, black, and your white. White being on the bottom, similar to what you have right there in the manual. So that's what we have. Double checking here on my own work. Looks good. All right, so now that we have that, what they want us to do is basically measure out 70 millimeters on the white wire specifically, because we're going to wind up cutting it. So we're going to go to the 7 here, and I'm going to give it right about to there, untwist it a little bit. And I'm not going to leave myself too much extra on this because these wires are twisted, which means that they are slightly longer than what I measured at when it's twisted up. So that's going to be close to probably 73, 74 if I went to go remeasure it now. Or even longer than that, really. Wow, look at that. It's actually close to 80, 85. So cut that back just a little bit. Let's see here, nearly inside microphone. Now we're going to strip. We're going to strip that off another 3 millimeters. Put this away. Roughly 3 millimeters. And then we're going to put a JST connector on that. So we need a JST pin. And let's see here. Let me make sure I get the right pins. So JST pin going on that, like so. And make sure I put this the right direction as well. And this JST connector is a little bit smaller, so we gotta line these up right. And I like to use still this double crimper with this style of connector. And the only problem when it comes to crimping sometimes with some of these connectors is the fact that the actual insulation on the wire that you're crimping to is a little bit big for the type of crimp that you're crimping on. So sometimes you got to really work at it to try to get it in there where it needs to be. The gauge of the wire with the insulation is a little bit big. So we got that on there, and then we're basically going to be connecting that to this JST connector. So I'm going to angle it so that it is got those 2 arrows, the locking arrows on there, right there. In the same orientation that's in the video or in the instruction manual, which is like this to me. So basically facing in that direction, and this white pin basically is going to go down here to lock in. So there we go. Nice, nice, nice. All right, moving right along, we're going to note right here on this particular page that we are being told now that we no longer need the white wire that was on our thing here, and I've been kind of slowly unraveling it here for a second, but basically the white wire on this long cable can come right out, and it's going to take you a couple minutes to do that. So I'm not going to bore you right now with a video of me doing that, but basically this white wire is going to come off completely. For now, we'll just pretend like it's gone already. And I'm going to take that, and what they want us to do here is using wire cutters cut the remaining. So we're going to cut the head off of this. So boom. And again, you could depin this if you wanted to. That's up to you. 100% up to you. And we got to put JST connectors on the red and the black. So basically what that comes down to is we don't need the white. We only need the red and black. So this is going away. Unravel it, whatever you do to get rid of it. And then connectors on these two here, which is what we're going to do. So another 3 millimeter. Oh, 2 millimeters this time. Really? So if you're concerned enough when you're stripping wires between if you're concerned enough with wires in between 2 and 3 millimeters, then this is probably the right hobby for you, because it's pretty anal. So yeah. All right, so I got approximately 2 to 3 millimeters. I'm going to shore that one up just a little bit. And then we're going to go back and put some more connectors here again. Clip these off. 1. And 2. Get them in our crimper. Put my glasses back on again, just make sure we get everything where we want it. And get that inserted. Crimp down. Good crimp. I'll do the other one real quick, and then I'll show you what those look like. And as you're watching these videos, or this video in particular, if there are certain things that you'd like me to elaborate on, such as crimping, let me know. You have to make a video about specific things. I mean, crimping video wouldn't have to be that long, but I could do it close up so you can see everything pretty well. So you can always leave a comment. The algorithm loves them comments, so feel free to do that. So let's bring this back. So there we go, right there with our crimps. And basically they look pretty good. Not too shabby. So there we go. All right, now back to the manual. And we need our, we're down here now. Need to look at this. That's what we cut off right there at the end. So right there is another one of our JST connectors. Pretty similar to what we did before. And in similar fashion, we're going to match up to the manual and put this on. So we're looking at black over here. Click. And red on this side over here. And close up on that is something like this. So that's the back side where the clippies are. And if we flip it around where the locking portion is, see red and black right like that. And the white wire is going to be discarded. All right. So And just a note actually while we're going through here, IDEX, do both of them. Yes, we got that. All right. Just a note on this real quick. So what's happening here, if you're wondering why they did what they did here, it's because they're actually pulling a signal from a separate location on the tool head board that doesn't necessarily come from the same set of pins that they are getting the power from, ground and the voltage. So that's why they're removing it from here and basically just pulling it in here. So it's going to get to the fan the way that they want it through that pin, and it doesn't need to go all the way back to anything else because the power is coming from someplace else. So I figure I would note that to you. Okay, so and I'm going to set this aside like that. And now we have power. Yes. All right, so we have a package here, and we're going to match up with what we did before. And basically we have another long stride here of wire, 1,500 millimeters, so that's roughly, 6 feet, not quite, 5.5 feet maybe. And these are going to be left full length, 12 volt red. And on these, we're going to be putting basically some terminal spades and then a plug on the other side. So not too bad. Same stuff, just a little different. And just so we're looking. So this is what's going in. And these are the pins that we're going to use for this endeavor. Like that, okay. So on the easy side, I call it the easy side because crimping spade connectors is about as easy as it gets. Just gonna twist these up and then grab my large crimpers, and these are easy. When people think of crimping wires, this is usually what they're thinking of if they've never done anything with electronics. I will say one thing on crimpers, because it's worth noting. When you have crimpers like this, and this is kind of an old pair, notice how there is a little finger that comes down into the middle section. So if you look closely on a crimp on the inside of it, which I don't know if it's going to show up here, but I will tell you, because I don't know, will it show up? It kind of shows up. On the top section, on this section up here, there is a split in the ring up top. And what you want to make sure is that that rounded part is actually where that ring is going to be, where that split is. And the part that pokes in is actually on the other side. Otherwise, what you'll wind up with is a crimp that isn't so great, because you'll wind up crushing the part. And you don't really want to crush it, you want to crimp it. That's what it comes down to. So you look for something more like that. Or yeah, like that. So, but these are really easy. They're kind of hard to mess up, even if you did crimp them the wrong way per se. As long as the nylon portion of these is still intact and the wire is snug, you should be okay. All right, so we got that. Now we have this, and it tells us, what does it say here? It says click fully inserted, yada yada. Crimp JST the end of each strip wire. Kind of did this in reverse. And again, let's see here. We are black, strip 3 millimeters, Molex microfit, then do the microfit crimps first. That's what we're going to do right now. So we'll get those on there. Make sure they're on there good, and then we're going to put them in. So let's do that next. And 3 millimeters, these are
pre-set up for crimping, but they're actually a little bit more than we want in terms of the insulation off of the wire. Big crimps like this, sometimes another thing I do is I kind of get them situated, especially if I'm too lazy or I don't have exactly the right size crimp, because these are relatively large, and I preset that outer crimp portion on there, and then when I go to crimp them with my crimpers, what I will do is make sure that I use one, the larger section here, and two, I don't go overly hard on them, because if I do, I might wind up cutting the wire. So if I don't do that, we should be okay, and that looks good. Okay, I'll give you a show of that. Not too bad. Looks pretty good. Let's get our positive one here. Get this one crimped in much the same way. Give it a little bit of a pre-crimp. And then we'll get them in here. That. And like so. Now we got to put it inside the connector. So looking over here on the manual as to what we're doing for placement, we are putting the red in the bottom there. And the black on the other side over here, like so. And on camera, that looks like this. The red and black, and nothing in the other two. So we're good there, and that does match my other one. So we can get rid of some of this trash real quick and get back into the manual, see where we're at. We've done this, we've done that, we've done this and done that. We did a 500, so we didn't adjust these. And then the last thing here is our prepare orbiter smart sensing wire. Okay, so our orbiter, this guy right here. So the kit that I have, the kit that I ordered was a while back, and the smart sensors didn't come with the kit. So I did order these from KB3D. Two reasons: I wanted them, and two, because they're in the manual. So I was able to get them KB3D. If you order the kit from RatRig now, I believe they come with the kit. I didn't get a discount or anything, and they never emailed and let me know that they, updated things. That'd be a good idea. If they have like a list as to when they do upgrades in the system, in the kit, and send out emails letting people know they can buy it and maybe even offer it at a discount. But not so much here. Had to buy my own and didn't have a discount. But thinking of discounts, I'm gonna put a link up for KB3D. And there'll also be one down below in the comments, or not in the comments, but in the description. And I believe that will net you a 5% discount if you use that link when you buy stuff over there. So if you need to do something like this, or if you're buying that for a different project, you'll be able to get a little discount, and I get a little bit as well. So it helps everybody out. So back to this, we have our wiring harness here for our smart sensing wiring harness. Smart sensor wiring harness, the Orbiter 2. And then we have our DuPont housing, which is that little black guy right there, and I'll show you that close up in a second. And then our crimps, which I have right there as well, just untying the knot that they, somewhere somebody spent time to do this, and it's not helpful. So, yeah. So we got this like that, and she is very long compared to the one I already previously did. So we'll be cutting that down, but let's show you quickly the connectors here. And right there is your DuPont 4-pin. These also come in a 3-pin, 2-pin, and built onto this right now are the 1-pins, which honestly could work if you want them to. If you wanted to skip the step for whatever reason, and I've done this in the past, you basically can lump these all together like so, in the proper order, of course, and then put a zip tie around them to hold them. We used to do this back in the day for motherboards when we used to hook them up to cases, because they tend to come like this because there was no good set standard for motherboards. But you get them set the way you want, put a zip tie around them, and then basically you can plug them in. You don't have to worry about them shifting around you on you too much. But they're calling out to put this on there, so we're going to do that today. And it's not too hard to do, so why not, right? All right, so we have that, we have this. All right, so measure 160 from the back of single white connector. So 160. Roughly there. And we're going to snip it off. Get rid of the excess. Spare wire. I do keep my spare wire though. You never know when you need some hookup wire or something like that. So good to keep spare wire. And then remaining wire can be discarded. No longer needed. Strip 2 millimeters insulation from each end of the bare wires. Right there. So that's what we'll do next. Kind of separate them off a little bit here. And again, 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters. I think it's funny they call out differences in those two. Quite frankly, that could be the difference between one person writing one section and another person writing another section. In other words, try to be relatively accurate, but 1 millimeter is not going to make or break your connector. With most of these crimps, we're not dealing with micro crimps here. These are just decently small. How about that? All right, so now we're going to crimp our DuPont 2.54 females on, which are these guys right there. That's what they look like. They're not too small. And we got to cut these off. 1, 2, 3, and then number 4. And the rest goes flying. And we'll get them in the crimper here. And I believe, if I recall, that should be good. And order doesn't matter while you're crimping, it just matters when you put those pins in. So right now, I'm just going to get these in place. It's 1. 2. This one is coming undone a little bit, so give it a couple spins. 3. And then one more to go. So one thing I will say about crimping is it does take practice. And the best way to practice crimping is to do it on video, because if you don't get better at it and you continue to do it very slowly, it makes for horrible videos. So there we go. Yeah. All right, so that's what we got. We got all 4 of them like that right there. And then on the close-up, we have them like that. So they're all crimped up, ready to go, ready for the party. And we got to figure out where these are going now. Verify all 4 crimp terminals correctly crimped to the wires. And I am pretty confident in mine. Again, if you wanted to, if you needed to, you can grab your multimeter and do a continuity test on these. On these specifically, they have the open ends on the backs of them. So you could always just basically just do it from that side and then do it for your crimp on the other side. So pretty easy if you want to test those out. And if you're new to crimping, then I suggest you do test those out. So, okay, now we need order of how we're putting these in. And there's a note here about the coloring scheme. So basically what they're saying is pay less attention to the color and not to blindly follow the colors. So what they mean by that basically is depending on the version of the runout sensor you have, you may have a different color order. And they want to make sure that you get them on at the same way that they have them on their photo. Now, that being said, mine actually mirrors what they have in the photo to the T, so I can follow that exactly. But that's a good thing to do, is kind of take a look at that and see if yours matches that before you go ahead and start pinning it over. But mine does, so I'm going to follow it. So right at the top. Okay, there we go. Click that one right in. So red there, and then blue is my number 2. That's in. And then yellow. Good. And then last but not least, and I'm going to give this a couple spins around. Oh, we're going to give this a couple spins to keep the the wires a little twisted. Twisted wires is actually a good thing. It creates cancellation between interference. So basically it keeps signals where they need to be. So retwist that a little bit, and there we go. And that is what we are looking for, pretty much. And so basically if we're looking at this across in the same photo that they provide us in the manual, there's our red at the top. So blue to red, red to blue, like that. And then green to yellow, yellow to green. So just backwards. All right, so that is that. What is next? What is next? DC wiring parts. DC wiring parts. All right, let's clean up this bench just a little bit. Put this stuff away. And on to some easy stuff here with this DC wiring parts. So 24 volt DC wiring, and specifically we're looking for these two things. These right here, these other parts I got right here are going to be, I assume, for the bed. Looks like ground for a bed and some other things, and then I'm not sure exactly. That looks definitely like a ground to the bed, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Right now we are on these. So we should have 4 blacks and 4 reds, 270 millimeters. Let's measure one real quick. Yep, pretty close. And positive negative wires, 16 gauge, strip 5 millimeters, are already stripped for us. And let's see here, 2 times forked terminals, and gently pull. So basically we're gonna make 4 of each of these, and I'm not gonna make you watch me make 4 of each of these. We'll make 1 set of these. And that's even pushing it really, right? And I believe after we get done this, we got some cool stuff coming. So let's do this. Get these in. And I'd be willing to bet, based on some information I have, that these will probably be a little bit longer than we need them. But that's fine. I have extra. I can always cut these off and crimp some new ones on. And I am a firm believer that you should have spare parts, especially something like a spade terminal. What's going on here? There we go. And it's okay on these if you see a little bit of the copper wire showing on the far end. Show what I mean by that. So right there, so there's a little bit of copper showing. It's not a big deal as long as your crimp's nice and snug and tight. When these go down, that won't make a difference. These are huge in the scheme of things. So anyways, you're gonna do that. You're gonna do that times what, 4 each. So you're gonna do 8 of those. I'm not gonna do 8 of them right now on camera because it's a waste of time for everybody. And I don't want to keep you here any longer than you need to be. So what are we at here? We are at LED strip wiring. Okay, so LED strip wiring is going to be this guy right here, I believe. Prepare the strip wiring, and they don't give you the SKU numbers on all the bags, but enclosed bag for, let's see, this enclosure wiring, LED strip wiring. I do not see the crimps for these though. Let's see, LED, power cable. Trying to see here exactly what we need. It's not overly obvious where these wires are coming from. Well, as luck would have it, I don't have any LED strip wiring, and I didn't see any LEDs in that box either. So maybe that was added after the fact, after I got this kit, or maybe it just wasn't included in my particular box. So maybe a note on the instructions that say something along the lines of these parts were included as of whatever date would be helpful. But I do know on my kit I don't have these parts. Or at least I can't seem to find them right now. And the cool part to this whole thing is that now brings us to the frame. So I'm going to clean up the desk area. I'm going to get everything all prepped up, and I'm going to check out the frame. And in the next video, we're going to build the frame of this printer. So hopefully, if you haven't already, you're going to go ahead and like, subscribe, ring that bell, leave a comment down below, do all those things. Kind of hack the algorithm for me and try to get more people on these videos. And I will see you next time when we put the frame together. So check out the next video. See you later.